This one isn't about science or the EU, but I think it's important anyway. Manchester. Now, of course, over the next few days, there's going to be a lot of political discussion about it, but I think there's something we can all agree on, and that some of these stories of ghoulish behaviour by some of the journalists are pretty worrying. So first I saw a message by Dan Het, a tweet that said, "I have dealt with 50 plus journos online today. 2 found my mobile number. This cunt found my house. Still don't know if my brother's alive." And he showed a picture of a little card from the Telegraph and a note saying, "Sorry to bother you, but..." Actually, his brother, Martin Het, has now been declared as dead. Obviously, very stressful. Daniel Het also shared a screenshot from Facebook showing all of the friend requests, and he said, "Look at all of these ghouls trying to get in touch with me." And there was another tweet that went viral. It was a Twitter thread, and I just want to read you bits of it. "When I was caught up in a terrorist incident 4 years ago, the behaviour of the UK media made the trauma much worse. They don't seem to have changed. Seen journalists from major news orgs outside hospital waiting to interview people leaving, asking witnesses for more and more detail." Later in the thread, she actually does go into what happened to her. And she says, "I said I wasn't going to list, but people asked. After being victim of terrorism, news organisations hacked my Facebook, turned up on my mum's doorstep, repeatedly called and doorstepped my mum before she knew that I was okay, repeatedly called the emergency number at hospital where I worked, called elderly relatives who didn't even know I was abroad and told them that I had been caught up in a terrorist incident, repeatedly called a mental health helpline where I volunteered on the emergency number, used personal Facebook accounts to try and friend me, turned up at my house for days, called my phone so much that I had to switch it off and couldn't access support from my real friends, turned up at my work, and when receptionists told them I was unable to speak to them, printed a story about how I was too traumatized to talk, took pictures of me in public places for days after, used coercive techniques to get a story. If you give us an interview, we'll stop. Kept asking me for more colour for the story when all I could see in my mind was a pavement running with blood. They got my phone number from work by pretending to be a friend at a time when I needed support, and to trust others, they made that impossible." And then someone replied to her telling a story of when she was 18 and got caught up with 9/11. A journalist found their way into that person's mother's house pretending to be a friend. And then someone sent to us another example from the Irish Mail on Sunday when they had published an exclusive on a woman who'd lost 5 family members, including small children. And this journalist turned up with 2 kids of her own and didn't introduce herself as a journalist until later in the conversation when she was also asking for photos. And then she was kindly asked to leave, but she published this exclusive for which she didn't have permission. And so, obviously, this kind of behaviour is horrific, and the fear with Manchester is that, of course, you've got a lot of kids there. And so if these predatory journalists can traumatise people who are already traumatised when they're adults, what about all these kids if there's nothing to keep an eye on it? Now, obviously, we had Leveson and the phone hacking scandal, and there was meant to be an implementation of something, and there wasn't. And then there was meant to be a follow-up, Leveson 2, which looked into how the cover-up of the phone hacking happened. And that has now been declared in the Conservative manifesto that it will be dropped, which is a real shame. But obviously it now begs the question, if you do have aggressive journalists harassing individuals who are traumatized, that have gone through such incidents, what can you do to stop it? Do we rely on the government? Do we push for inquiries? Do we hope that some of the fund being collected for the Manchester victims is going to be used to give them advice and support should they be harassed like this? Or do we need some kind of citizen effort to make a database of those journalists that are actually going out and harassing vulnerable people at vulnerable times? I don't know. What do you think? Please put in comments below.